at Yardley Maple. I'm the owner-operator, Joe Yardley, and we're just going to show you a little bit about how to make maple syrup today and bring you inside our sugar house as we're boiling maple sap. So it takes a lot of sap to make a little bit of syrup. The sap comes from the maple trees. We have over 3,600 maple trees up in our woods behind the sugar house. And to give you a visual here, these milk jugs, that's how many gallons of sap it takes to make just 1 gallon of pure maple syrup. We have to boil all the water out of that sap to make thick maple syrup. So follow me into the sugar house. We're doing some boiling here.
Yeah, I know.
That's how we make syrup. We boil a lot of the water to evaporate the water to make maple syrup. So this is one of our holding tanks right here where the raw sap is coming out of the woods. We have a vacuum pump and we take a suction on all the trees. All 3,600 trees are hooked together via a tubing system, and it all gets drawn down to this big holding tank here. In the back corner of the sugar house, there's a reverse osmosis machine. I think we can show you that a little later, but that's the real workhorse of the operation. That is squeezing the water out of the sap. Sap out of the tree is about 2% sugar. Once we run it through the reverse osmosis machine, it goes from 2% sugar all the way up to 20% sugar. Maple syrup is 66% sugar. So to go from the reverse osmosis machine up to this, what we call a head tank. It's up high just so gravity can work, and it will gravity feed the evaporator as the evaporator is boiling off liquid. So the reverse osmosis machine takes a lot of the water out of the syrup. The rest of it has to be done on the evaporator, and that's also where you get your flavor from. The flavor comes from the caramelization of the boiling process. So you see some steam leaving the sap right there. We burn wood. Wood is our means of heat for the evaporator. You want to come around on the other side. So there's that head tank up top where I told you about. That's where the concentrated sap from the RO machine comes in. It comes down this pipe into the back of the evaporator, into this float box. There's a float in there that's floating right on the level of the sap in the back pan. There's your level there. And as that float drops in the box, it opens a valve and lets more sap in to keep that level right where we want it, above the level of the pans, so we don't burn them. This back pan is the workhorse of the evaporator. It does the majority of the boiling. It's shaped kind of like an accordion, up and down, up and down. So if you stretch that back pan out, it'd be this large, giant flat pan. But for efficiency, we scrunch it up, so there's a lot of surface area in a small footprint. So the less dense sap is coming into the rear of the evaporator, and it's pushing the more dense syrup forward. As it gets more and more cooked, it works its way forward until we get to the front pans. There's another float box for the front pan that works similar to the one in the back. It's controlling our level in the front pan, keeping it real consistent. The front pans are like the finishing pans. They are flat in the bottom, much different from the flue pan in the back. And it is split up into 4 different sections here, and the same thing happens. The less dense sap is pushing the more dense syrup farther over to the draw side. So when the syrup's done, there's a thermometer here that's checking the temperature of our syrup. When it gets up to approximately 219 degrees Fahrenheit, it'll work its way through this pipe. This valve will automatically open up. We'll draw syrup off into this hopper here. We'll check it for density. We'll use a hydrometer, drop it in there, and it floats and measures it for specific gravity or thickness. And when it's just the right thickness, then it's done. It's syrup. But it has almost like a gritty texture to it. They call that niter or sugar sand. That has to be filtered out. And we do that with this filter press. there's a pump there, and we're going to pump the syrup through all these papers and then up into the canner. It's a propane canner. There's propane heat underneath it, keeping it nice and hot so it'll sterilize the inside of the container and seal the cap. From there, the only thing left to do is to grade the syrup. All syrup is graded. There's light, there's amber, and there's dark syrup. Typically, the darker it is, the stronger the maple flavor. At the beginning of the season, you make lighter syrup. As the season goes on, the syrup gets darker and darker. There's more bacteria in the darker syrup. There's more antioxidants. It's actually a little healthier for you. It's just a matter of preference, what syrup people like. Right now, I'm putting in, we call it defoamer in the maple world, but it's basically concentrated vegetable oil. It breaks the surface tension of any of the foam that's in the evaporator, boiling up so it doesn't overflow. Every few minutes, we just put a couple drops of that defoamer in, and it knocks the foam right down.
Joe, can you tell us about the maple syrup up on that wall here that you have?
Oh yeah. So all this syrup that you might be familiar with, Log Cabin, Mrs. Butterworth, Hungry Jack, has 0% maple syrup in it. It's just high fructose corn syrup, and in my opinion, it doesn't taste very good. And this is our syrup. It's 100% maple. There's nothing in it but what comes from a maple tree. It's just maple sap, which is very thin and watery. It looks like water until it's boiled down and made into pure maple syrup. Like I said, 66% sugar.
Okay, you're done.
All right, so thanks for visiting us today and learning a little about maple. Hope you enjoyed your visit. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.